welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. It is a Q&A episode. I have three questions I want to dive into. But first, before I do that, I just want to go over my free body recomp checklist. So if you want to have a better understanding of what body recomp is, how to do it, the 10 things you need for body recomp, the two different types of body recomp, the importance of focusing on your body composition, then that free checklist is for you. And the link to that is in the show notes. So with that out of the way, let's dive into today's question. First question's around coming back from injury and what you really need to focus on in terms of body composition. I think with this, we don't need to overcomplicate it. I think really the first thing that we're going to be looking at here is this probably isn't the time to just ramp up and do a bunch of volume. I think you should ease back into it, and you can really get away with doing a lot less than you think initially. And you obviously want to make sure whatever your injury was, that you're doing that to avoid getting hurt again. But really, I think the main things that I'm looking for here when somebody's returning from injury, and this is like the perfect time to see kind of that simultaneous, you'll be in a good spot to really add muscle with potentially, if maybe gained too much weight, you could do a little bit of a recomp, right? Where you're actually simultaneously building muscle and losing body fat, or you could really just pack on a lot of muscle without gaining any body fat, because your body's you're almost going to regain what you potentially lost during that period of time. So I think the things that we want to focus on is one, just slowly overloading. So whether that be through training intensity, whatever it may be, just slowly overload, add some reps here and there, just like you normally would with your training. I think, again, you can get away with a little bit less and definitely caution on less initially. From there, I think if you eat enough protein regularly, you're around 1 gram per pound of body weight, you're just going to see muscle come back on, and you're going to see a nice change in your physique. You also see strength come on super quick. And then I think we really want to avoid underfueling too much in this process. And so what I mean is, when I say underfueling, yes, calories, but also micronutrients as well too. We want to make sure we have a good base and making sure we're not missing out on anything there. And also just making sure we're not in a huge deficit as well too. So trying to avoid really low calories to lose body fat or whatever it may be. But we definitely want to make sure we fuel enough in this process. And that could be a small deficit for some periods of time. It could be some days of maintenance, whatever it is. I think, again, if you're eating enough protein, you're overloading, and you're just making sure you're not you're going to be in a good spot to really see big change in your body composition and regain muscle in that process there. Obviously, we still want to continue to focus on recovery, making sure you're recovering and not doing too much. But again, one kind of thing that we can do here to speed up recovery and make sure that you're recovering well and able to continue to push training and continue to overload is, don't underestimate the impact of building your cardio base for recovery, right? So this goes for if you're injured. So again, I think if we regularly train, we have a good amount of strength and muscle, and we have a good cardio base. One, I think any injury you do have, you're going to recover much quicker. And obviously, the more muscle we have in general, the more we have to pull from during that period of time when maybe we can't train. And that's been shown to be super helpful, right? So yes, if you're not actively able to weight train for whatever reason, you'll still lose muscle, but the more muscle you'll have, the better off you're going to be. You're going to have more to pull from than someone who has less. And that can be super helpful from a recovery standpoint. But again, a cardio base is definitely something that is going to help speed up the recovery. If you do get, say, surgery, or you have surgery or whatever it may be, and you can't really weight train, being able to do some sort of conditioning during that time, I think will help speed up your process and will help you obviously build your cardiovascular system, and you obviously get the benefits of exercise there. So hopefully, obviously, you need to find something that you can do that is not injured at that time. But again, I think when we get back into it, making sure that we still continue to do that conditioning and cardio is going to help you recover faster, recover from your training sessions, and again, get back to normal a lot quicker there. So I think we can be really simple here with what we do. As far as how long the phase goes, I think it could be anywhere from 4 to 20-ish weeks, right? It could be longer than that, depending on what's going on. But again, I think that the key thing is making sure your performance is in a good spot, you're progressing in that, we're eating enough protein, and then we're not underfueling too much. And we can look at that again by where's your weight trending, coming back to performance, how is that going? Do you feel like you're still adding some muscle in that process? And then, looking at your biofeedback, right? Are you feeling recovered? Where's your libido at? You can cross-reference blood work as well too. You can do all these things to make sure that you're not underfueling in that process. But I also think there's nothing wrong with, if sedentary, maybe you ate a little bit more than what you wanted, you put on a little bit of body fat when you were or recovering from injury. Again, you can get away here with a small deficit and really get that kind of recomp effect where we get that simultaneous fat loss and muscle gain, what most people want to go for. But I think we can really maximize doing both during this period of time. But again, this does depend on where you're at. As I'll always say, with body recomp and simultaneous fat loss and muscle gain, again, yes, body recomp is simultaneous fat loss and muscle gain, but to me, it's also changing that body composition over time and improving that. We're recomping your body. But if we want to get the classic fat loss and muscle gain, that's got to be under the right conditions. Again, when we think about it's basically going to be on a sliding scale. The less muscle you have, the more body fat you have, you're in a fantastic spot to recomp. And then so that's where you're currently at. Obviously, the more muscle you have, the leaner you are, the less of the less you're not in a good of a spot to do both at the same time. Now, on top of that, the inputs that we do are also going to tell you where you're at on that sliding scale of the likelihood of that happening, right? So the better your inputs are, the better your recovery is, better fueled you are for your training and in general, right? So we're thinking short term, but also long term. The more dialed in your protein is, the more dialed in your training is. That's going to bump you up on that scale even more. So again, you take someone that is super lean, has a lot of muscle already, and they're lacking in some of those things. They already have a small capacity to do both at the same time, and that's going to go down even more. So this is really all across a sliding scale here. And this returning from injury really is one of those prime spots there because you are potentially detrained. Most likely you're detrained, at least from a muscle building standpoint there. So those are some things to focus on when coming back from an injury. So I got a good question on YouTube, and this was around my cardio. I did an episode on, I changed my mind on cardio and fat loss. And the response was, how would you manage to keep a relatively high endurance base that you have built before a fat loss phase and you would like to maintain that endurance base, right? I find it difficult to keep the intensity high, even if I lower the volume, or is it just a necessary trade-off there? So I do think it is a little bit of a potential trade-off, but there are probably some things that you could potentially increase or improve here in this process, right? So if this is you want to maintain a good cardiovascular, you want to keep a high endurance base during this time. One, do you need to increase your calories to match your output, right? Now, we still need to, if our goal is fat loss, we still need to make sure we're in a deficit. We have to be in a deficit. But if you're someone who you're just getting calorie numbers based off of a calculator or what you think you need to do to lose weight, are you increasing your calories to match that output? I think that's a big thing here is if you want to keep up, when you have high energy expenditure, you train a lot, like we have to adjust our caloric intake a bit to match that. But again, we still have to keep a deficit. We can't just increase our calories and then now we're not in a deficit. That's obviously not going to help there. So that could be one thing that you do. And so this is my next thing here is look out for large deficits plus high training volume. Again, if you have a large deficit, you're losing weight pretty quickly. Like that deficit is going to impact your ability to it's going to impact your performance. Okay. And then obviously if you combine that with a high training volumes, like you're trying to do a lot, that your recovery is going to be impacted and you're just not going to be able to maintain those higher intensities there, right? Look at, and here, well, I'm actually going to add this in here. So nutrition. And so it could be a deficit thing, right? Like it could be a thing where your deficit's just too large for maintaining performance. And unfortunately, this is going to be one of the main takeaways of this entire thing here. But at the end of the day, this is why like fat loss and performance related goals, they can go hand in hand for a period of time, but we have to be smart with what we do. It ultimately, when we're in an energy deficit, we're trying to lose body fat. That's not the time to maximize your performance there. And so that is one of the potential just trade-offs there with that. So again, it's like for somebody who wants to maintain a high level of activity or high training load, we have to be a little bit more strategic with our caloric intake. We can't just slash calories and then expect to maintain our performance with what we're trying to do. Could you do some higher calorie days at maintenance? So this is something that I'll do with people who have high output is having some days that are higher calories. So this comes back to potentially a strategy that you could use to increase your calories to match your output. So maybe you have 5 days where you're a bit more aggressive with your deficit, and then you have 2 days where you consume a few more calories, right? Maybe that's around your training, on those training days, whatever it may be. But could you potentially add in some higher calorie days at maintenance to offset some of the negative things from being in a deficit, right? Especially when it comes to performance there. Again, just the more you want to do from an endurance training standpoint and just training in general, the more it's going to be impacted in a fat loss phase. But the good news is it's going to take a lot less to maintain than you think, right? I don't think we necessarily need to do as much as we think here, right? But maybe that high end stuff will slightly decrease for a short period of time, that really high intensity type stuff, the more of it you want to do and things like that. But I also think we can keep a good base, or we can keep a good cardio base with doing some more volume and lower intensity stuff, or again, slightly moderate intensity, less volume, right? Like again, we have to control the intensity and the volume side of things. But your high end kind of output may slightly decrease during a fat loss phase. So in that case, it is a potential trade-off there, right? But just the more you want to do, the more performance you want to have, the better you want your performance to be, the more focused you are on that, just those things are not going to line up with fat loss there, right? And then obviously the quicker we want to lose weight, the leaner we want to get, the more we want to lose, these things are going to be impacted more there. I guess a few other things would be, what does your nutrition look like around your workouts? That could be a big thing as well too. Eating more carbs around your workouts could help you with maintaining your intensity. If you're just consuming less carbs and then you're just not, now you're having the same amount of carbs and everything's has the same setup, you could potentially increase your carbohydrate intake around your workouts, and that may help with recovery, but then it may also help with performing during your sessions. Again, I think it's going to be more beneficial for higher intensity stuff and longer duration type stuff. So again, if output is your main focus, again, eating around your workouts could be super helpful from that perspective. Again, your overall intake throughout the entire week and days is really going to be a big driving factor here with all this. But this brings me to my next point. What do your macros look like? Again, you could be going lower carb than what you need. You might need to be a little bit higher carb in your fat loss phase. Again, with the understanding that in order to lose body fat, we need to be in a energy deficit. But look at your macros, obviously making sure protein's in a good spot. Fats might be one that have to be a little bit lower than what we would potentially suggest. So then that way you can get in enough carbs for your performance there. Obviously, look at recovery too. I think this is super neglected here. Again, a lot of people that really enjoy training just push it. They don't really focus on the recovery side of things. It's a boring thing. Oh yeah, I'm good to go there with that. But we need to look at sleep, not just, hey, are you sleeping 8 hours, but is your quality of sleep there? What does your circadian rhythm look like? Like these are big things that can impact your performance long-term. It's not necessarily the deficit. It's just that, hey, like sleep could be maximized. And again, for 99.9% of people, there's at least one thing that we could do to improve our sleep. That's probably the biggest thing that I hear is, oh yeah, no, sleep's good. I sleep 8 hours. I'm good to go. When you really audit what's going on, so you're not getting any sunlight throughout the day. So that's one thing you can do to improve your sleep, but people don't associate that. Or again, they leave lights on in their house at night. And it's like, again, that's another low hanging fruit thing that we can do to potentially improve your sleep quality. So things like that. And then again, meal timing around sleep as well too. And then just stress management, managing the overall stress load on your body. A deficit is a stressor on the body. It can be a good one, and it probably is a good one, but it still is a stressor on the body. Training's a stressor on the body. And then if you pair that with, hey, you also have family responsibilities, social responsibilities, work responsibilities, these are all stressors on the body. And then again, if we're doing other things, other common stressors, maybe there's some gut health issues, maybe there's other things that are putting stress on the body, these start to add up, and that's going to impact your ability to perform as well too, especially in a deficit. So I think with this, the main takeaway is these things should help you. Like definitely look at that. I think he responded and mentioned that probably doing too much overall, right? So doing too much resistance training, doing too much cardio and life stress in general, and mentioned sleep too little and eat too little around training, especially carbs, right? So it's like those are things that are going to make a huge difference, right? They bring up a good point. Resistance training, like that is, we have to manage the overall training load as well too. And if we're trying to do 6 days a week of weight training and trying to maintain a high endurance base while trying to lose body fat, so there's going to be some trade-offs somewhere, right? So this might have to be where while you're doing this, if maintaining your endurance base is super important to you, you may have to reduce your training volume that you're doing there. The cool thing with resistance training, same thing with maintaining conditioning. We don't, like in a fat loss phase, we really don't need to do as much resistance training as we think. I think 2 to 3 days per week, hitting each muscle group 2 to 3 times per week, getting in 6 to 10 sets per muscle group, training at 0 to 2 RIR is going to be more than enough. Like you're going to be good to go from that. Because again, this isn't the time that we're going to try and drive muscle growth. And so that's enough to maintain what you have. And if we really want to push muscle growth, we obviously need to do that in these phases where we're eating enough and our recovery is a better spot there. So we do need to look at that. But they also mentioned their sleep's not great, not eating around training as well. Life stress is high in general. So it's like there's a lot of things that you could do here to do that. And I think, again, when we come back to if you want to maintain a high endurance base, and those things aren't in check, but you're having trouble with managing your intensity to maintain that endurance base, these are going to be things that are really going to help you out versus, oh, hey, fat loss. Yes, in general, fat loss is not the time to push performance, but we often overlook a lot of things that we can do to get more out of our performance during fat loss. Because I think that's again, a main takeaway here is we have to be like, if performance is a goal, again, understanding that no matter what, this is not like being in an energy deficit is already not going to be the greatest time to push performance. So what that means is we need to be on top of things even more. We have to be strategic if we want to maintain it, but then even potentially improve it slightly with the understanding that it's already going to be hampered a bit by the deficit. And this goes the same thing with muscle growth. People talk about, to go back to the body recomp side of things, people will say, oh, you can't build muscle in a deficit. That's not necessarily true. Again, it depends on where you're at. or hey, a surplus is going to be best for muscle growth. And right, it's again, when we look at this, it's okay. Yes, a deficit compared to a surplus, a small surplus. Yeah, you could still build muscle in a deficit, but the rate at which you'll build muscle is going to be much better when you're feeling enough, right? Same thing with if you're closer to maintenance calories. Like again, maybe you're not absolutely maximizing muscle growth, but you're still building some, right? And it's all on a spectrum here in terms of the fuel you give your body and how much muscle you have and your current body composition is all going to impact, and your methods are all going to impact your ability at how much you're going to build. But I think people think it's an on-off switch of, hey, you're either building muscle or you're not building muscle. And again, there's everything in between there with that. Now, as I say all this about fat loss is not the time for performance related goals. Again, really, it's just about maintaining, right? It's about maintaining muscle. It's about maintaining your performance. And again, this is why with fat loss, we have to have a reason as to why we're doing fat loss. If it's just aesthetic reasons, but then you have certain performance goals that you want to have, we just, again, have to weigh the pros and cons of that, right? But if you need to fat loss to be in a better body composition, and maybe that in turn is going to improve your performance, that's a different story. But again, it's still, that isn't going to, that time that we're working on your body composition, that's not the time that you are going to absolutely maximize your performance during that time. The only time I would say you'll see a performance improvement with really anything is if you're like super deconditioned and you're at higher levels of body fat, right? Then I do think that, again, for you, if you're at higher, like you getting down to leaner levels, losing some body fat probably is going to improve performance, right? So we take this endurance standpoint. If your goal is to improve your endurance, body weight's a huge piece of this. So if your body weight's super high or your body fat's high and you want to get it down, that right there is just going to improve your performance, right? So it is somewhat context dependent, but generally speaking, the more you train, the better trained you are, the leaner you are. Fat loss and performance are not going to go together there. So that would be the only exception to this. But again, that's the same thing with body composition as well, too, right? I think when we're deconditioned and we are at higher, we have less optimal body composition, we have a lot more wiggle room with what we can do. It's really just, yeah, we don't have to get super nitty gritty with it. We just need to get you moving forward to that standpoint. So hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully this gives you some ideas of what you can do if you're in a fat loss phase. And again, most of the time there's a lot of things that we still can work on before we need to worry about the fat. Oh, hey, a deficit's an issue. There's a lot of things that a lot of low-hanging fruit there. All right, cool. So next question I have is, so I have a new client and she was talking about, she generally likes to go out to eat a lot during the week. She in the past has done where she really doesn't like to eat during the day at all. And then we'll go out to eat and then eat calories at night. And she was just wondering like, why, like, how come she can't continue to do that? And so I want to go over why fasting all day can backfire, right? Because I do think that's a way that a lot, like when people are trying to actively lose weight or improve their body composition, I do think this is a very common way that people will eat. Even if people don't necessarily have a lot of weight to lose, they just do this because of the way that they hear fasting is good for you. They want to just continue to lose weight without really thinking about body composition or if they actually really need to lose weight. And just with the way people work 9 to 5s, it's just easy to not eat throughout the day and then eat later on. But again, I can't tell you how many times I hear people that want to improve their body composition and get leaner. And they're like, I don't really eat very much. I just eat one meal a day at night. And okay, that obviously is not working for you. But so what I want to go over is like why that can be an issue for a lot of people there. Because again, when we look at the intermittent fasting, a lot of times in the research, it will show that it is better from like a weight loss perspective. And you are cutting out a big chunk of the day that you are eating. But I do think there's some issues with eating more of your calories at night versus not eating throughout the day. So I think the first main thing that we want to look at here is how your body handles blood sugar, glucose, everything like that. It decreases as the day goes on. Okay. So your body's just not going to utilize the food you give it as well the later we get into the day. So if we're mostly consuming all our calories at night, we're not in the best state from a metabolic standpoint to utilize all that food, right? So we're not taking advantage of our natural body's rhythms here. This can be your circadian rhythm, whatever it is. We're not taking advantage of that there. Plus, the more food we eat closer to sleep, the more it's going to start to impact sleep, right? So that in turn is going to impact body. It's going to impact your sleep quality, which once sleep gets off, and even it's like one of those things where if it's off by a little bit, like a little bit of sleep quality decrease here, to me, it stacks up over time. And so these things can really add up. So again, it's not if you do that one time, it's just this kind of chronic, hey, you do that over and over again, where you're really going to run into issues there. So it can impact sleep, which in turn, the next day is going to impact your blood sugar regulation, how your body utilizes the food you give it, and it's slowly going to chip away at your body composition there. So that's the first thing is our body's just not as effective and efficient at utilizing food the later we get into the day. Plus, I came across a study that showed that we also are hungrier at night. For not eating throughout the day, we're going to be hungry because we're not eating food. You're not giving your body any fuel. And then on top of it, we already have this natural instinct to want to eat more later in the day. And this is just going to be this recipe for overconsumption, right? It's one of those things where, yeah, you don't really eat much throughout the day, but then if you eat something that is more calorically dense, you can easily smash 2,000 to 3,000 calories without really feeling like you ate anything throughout the intestine. I didn't eat anything all day. And then boom, you just subconsciously eat way more calories there, right? And then on top of it, our body doesn't handle that food as well during that time. And then potentially, if it's starting to impact sleep, we're eating more and more food closer to sleep. That's going to impact how your body handle. It's going to impact your blood sugar and everything that the following day as well too, right? Again, your body's just not going to be as in good of a state there with that. And I also do feel like this kind of leads to a poor food choices and an excuse for those poor food choices. Oh, I didn't eat all day. I skipped meals. So now I can, again, that's where like intermittent fasting is hyped up, is you can eat really anything you want with it, is what people will say. And so you see these people eating super tasty foods, pizzas, stuff like that. And oh man, that's awesome. Wait, I can do that and lose weight. I'm going to do that. So again, I think it also leads to poor food choices and an excuse for that. But the big things here are going to be, one, especially for people that start to get 30 or 40 or above. Yes, we need to, a big issue is over consuming calories, but a big issue is it's twofold. It's over consuming calories for some people, but lacking vitamins and minerals that we need, right? So our diet is lacking the nutrition that we need. And so this is just going to make that even worse. If we're just not consuming any food throughout the day, and then we're eating a bunch of food at night, depending on what our food choice is, which again, it's typically poor food choices, we're going to be lacking micronutrients in our diets. So we're not going to be giving our body what it needs as well too. And this is all going to lead to other issues down the line as well too. And you're just not going to see the body comp change. You may see it could change your weight in the short term, whatever. But again, from a body comp standpoint, we're not setting ourselves up there, and we're not maximizing our metabolism in this. So you're going to feel like you have to be in this super low calorie state. Otherwise, if you go any higher, you just gain a bunch of weight. So again, metabolic health is impacted as well too. So again, we're lacking micronutrients. And then when we talk people 40 plus, especially women, we need these micronutrients, right? For bone health, for overall health. And if we're lacking these, that's where we're going to lead to some issues down the line there. Again, I also think the other issue too, I didn't even put this in there, from a gut health standpoint. One, our body, again, is just like, digestion is not as good later in the day as it is earlier in the day. And if we're not consuming food throughout the day, and we're eating all our calories and eating all these foods late at night, digestion is going to be impacted, and that's going to lead to gut health issues, which at the end of the day, if we have gut health issues, that's going to impact everything, because the gut really impacts so many different things in your body. So we also have that. The next big thing is now we're probably going to be low in protein. So again, when we look at body composition, that's not going to be great as well too. So we need to make sure that with this, we're going to be low on protein. It's going to be hard to get, say, 100 to 150 grams of protein at night. It's going to be really hard to do that in just, say, one meal or two meals in a 2, 3, 4, 5 hour span at night. There, you can do it, but it's just going to be super hard, which now again comes back to the body composition side of things. And again, when we talk people over 40, 50, we need to make sure we get plenty of protein, and we might need a little bit more protein than someone who's, say, in their 20s there. And then that right there should tell you, hey, this probably isn't the greatest way to eat. And then lastly, I also think it's not great for performance. If you train early in the day and then you don't eat till night, I think your performance is going to be impacted, right? Not only are we not getting in food around our workouts, which is going to impact it, especially afterwards in that post-workout period. But again, if you do have some performance related goals, this is going to be terrible for that, especially if you train earlier in the day. So I also think it's going to be great, not great from that. So I think, to sum this up, I think some form of intermittent fasting is fine. Not fine. I think it's probably a good thing, right? So we all are going to naturally fast from, at least hopefully, when we're sleeping. Some people, I guess, could sleepwalk and eat food. Like, I guess it could be a thing there. So we all naturally fast there, right? But I think slightly extending that to, say, 12 to 14 hours is probably, from like a metabolic health standpoint, overall health standpoint, gut health standpoint, probably not the worst idea in the world to take some time away from constantly eating food. But I think if we go longer than that, and again, we set it up in a way that we're just trying to eat all our meals super like later at night or when we get home from work, I think you're going to run into some issues there of you're going to overconsume calories. And again, it's not going to be great from a gut health perspective. Your body's not going to analyze the food you give it as well. And this is all going to lead to a bunch of issues where you may lose weight for a couple of weeks, but then you're going to plateau with it and potentially even go the other way there. And so again, I think 12 to 14 hours of intermittent fasting per day could be a good thing to shoot for all those reasons there. And again, if you are also focused on performance and body comp, I wouldn't go any longer than that either. I think it's going to be suboptimal from a performance and body comp standpoint if we go longer than that. So I think that sweet spot is 10 to 14 hours of intermittent fasting per day for all those benefits that I talked about, but also for focused on performance and body comp, which if you listen to this, you are that person. So that's it. I hope this was helpful. If you found this podcast to be helpful in any way, if you could leave a rating and review, and that will help more people find this podcast there. And if you haven't yet, give me a follow on Instagram, Jeff, HOEHN_. And that's where I'm most active on social media. And I will talk to you guys next time.